Welcome to UFOs over Pittsburgh. I'm your host, John Ventry. I'm the Pennsylvania State Director for the Mutual UFO Network. Our guest is Fred Saluga, who is the West Virginia State Director for MUFON and the Western Regional Director for Pennsylvania. Today's topic is law enforcement and UFOs, and welcome to our show. Fred, today we want to talk about police cases and police involvement in UFO investigations. And you were a former police chief, so you have a lot of experience in what police investigate and why they do or don't investigate. But I had written a chapter in my book, UFOs Over Pennsylvania, on police cases in Pennsylvania. And one of the things I found out by going through all of the MUFON files was that about 4% of our cases, 4%, come from police. Right. So for Pennsylvania, that would give us about one case per month was actually reported by a police officer or even a retired police officer. But let me just tell you about a couple of the better cases I came across that we put in the book. Well, actually, one that came up in 1978, you might remember this, and it's not exactly a police case, but October 28th, 78, there was the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Dallas Cowboys.
Right, I remember that.
50,199 fans at the stadium. They look up, they see two UFOs over the stadium.
Right.
And Pat Summerall said to Tom Brookshire, "How about explaining that?" And they cut the commercial. So that was a big deal back then.
If you remember, I investigated that.
Oh, I didn't know that, Fred. And I know the outcome.
We got the call came in, the report came in from California, and we investigated it.
Oh, okay. And what was the final result on what that was?
There was something out there.
It was, well, it was Mylar balloons is what it turned out to be.
Yes and no.
Oh, okay.
Yes
I was
and
on
no.
the understanding
No,
that was
yes
a
and
Mylar
no.
balloon.
No.
So what's
Yes
the
and
no
no.
part?
It could have been balloons, but it could have been something else too.
Okay.
I mean.
But the important thing is the Steelers won 14-3.
Right. Yeah, I remember that case because the guy called it in.
Okay.
And we went back and looked at the film and everything. So.
Okay. All right. And so we had a few other, I want to just bring up a couple of cases here in Pittsburgh because the chapter's full of police cases around the state. But in July 6, 1982, this is at 4:40 in the morning, Allegheny police detective, he gets up, he takes a look outside at the full moon, and he spots an object. He thought it was a star. He says until it starts to move at a tremendous rate of speed, but it stops 6 times. He saw it move, stop, move, stop, move, stop, 6 times. He said it had a zigzagging motion, and it was moving from the north to the east. So that was a case in 1982 right here in Pittsburgh. We had over in Butler, well, let's talk about this one first. May of 2008, I was involved in this case. This is a case over in Bucks County. Right. And this case has been on television a few different times. It was MUFON case number 11402. Now, we're having this UFO wave across Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
And I think this case is important. You got this young police officer in his patrol car, right? And he's radioing another police officer a couple of blocks away, saying, "Do you see what I see in the sky?" So he files this report, and it's a long report that he files, a lot of detail, which you'd expect from a police officer. And he says, "I'm an avid military aircraft enthusiast." He looks at the sky. He knows all the planes that we have, and So he files this report, and one of the things he says is, I will have to check my police report for the exact time and date. And he said, our department received a few calls regarding these objects in the sky. Now, I was never able to get a copy of his police report, even though I tried. But he said in the report to us that he filed the police report, and there was a total of 6 witnesses to this.
How'd you try to get it?
Well, we filed the Freedom of Information Act to get it, and I never got a response on that. But let me tell you the rest of the story with this here. He said the object appeared to turn in place, and it seemed to shift. It would rise suddenly. It would move slightly from side to side. There was no noise. It's kind of shuddered while it moved, almost like it was vibrating. Then he said it descended slightly. He said it was not a helicopter, although it kind of looked like the movements of a helicopter. He said it was not a helicopter. And he says, I've seen and can name just about every aircraft in the sky. And he puts the report in with us, says there's a total of 6 witnesses. And at the time, we were contacted by the Discovery Channel to do a show called UFOs Over Earth. And we did the show on these cases in Bucks County, and I wanted him as a witness. And I emailed him, and I also contacted his police department, the media supervisor there at the police station. And he emailed me back saying, quite frankly, this has drawn enough attention from within my ranks. And he said reporting it was basically what I wanted to do, and it wouldn't be good for my career. And when I spoke to the police department, they said no, they didn't want him to come on TV. Which I thought was kind of odd, because there's been other cases, you see them on TV shows, where they do have police officers come forward and testify. You know, so like here's...
It depends on the department. It depends on the area. A lot of departments, they'll refuse anything with it, and then some just let the police come out. It depends on your department.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's different. Like back in the 50s, there was actually a... like a ruling that said the Air Force had got with the airlines industry.
Right.
And they said that if the pilots came forward back in 1954, that they would be prosecuted for espionage if they talked about UFOs. So there's nothing like that in police departments discouraging or encouraging.
It's an unspoken word.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk about it within a department, but you don't take it outside.
So it's kind of unfortunate, because you know, we live in a free country, and we should be able to discuss these things, you know?
Well, but see, again, John, if you're out there seeing UFOs, you're not doing your job, what you're supposed to be doing, and city council will complain that they're paying you for nothing. You know, so there's a lot of politics behind it.
Well, it's also with the credibility. The media has, and the CIA has really made UFOs to be non-credible.
Right.
So if you start talking about it, it's something wrong with you. So if you're a police officer that people look up to, you know, you shouldn't be talking about UFOs. So that's the trick that's been played on us.
We had an incident back when I was a police officer where I was with two state cops. And we was sitting there looking over the hill, and we actually seen a light up there, and it was sitting up there. So I called in and I said, you know, car to Masontown, and I said, you guys get any reports of any UFOs in the area? And the lieutenant came over and said, you want to report a UFO? And I said, no, and that was it. They had a council meeting the next night, and they brought it up at the council meeting. What does this guy do, sit there and look for UFOs all night? We should fire him.
Wow.
And then the 2 state policemen came in, and then it was, oh my God, the state police was there, you know, so it was a totally different situation. But I think it has a lot to do with the people that run the department.
Yeah.
You know, what their feelings are, and you know, that's when you can do whatever you got to do then.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you would think that there'd be kind of a set policy with it. No, you were mentioning the fire departments. What are fire departments? Do they have anything written as far as? Not to my knowledge. Well, there's the fire officer's guide, right, for the fire departments. Did you have a copy of that, the fire officer's guide?
I don't have it here, no.
You wanted to mention, but in there, doesn't it give a warning, the fire officer's guide to disaster control?
Right.
There's a warning as far as what to do regarding UFOs.
Well, there's a whole chapter on UFOs. Okay. And it says here, one of the things is UFOs a threat to national security. Okay, I don't know how that could be, you know, with that. But adverse potentials on populations, such as radiation in the Cash Landrum case in Texas. Some negative reactions claim a purported abduction cases, but these are usually little substantiated. Regional power outages, okay, they have said that UFOs can actually cause power outages. You know, with the firemen, I think the police should be involved in all this too. Physiological hazards, psychological, and I mean, they go through all this. But then again, you know, the police don't do it. The police let the firemen do it.
So the fire department in the Fire Officer's Guide to Disaster Control has a chapter, 13,
Right.
and it's actually 13 pages long,
Right.
that talks about UFOs and a warning
Right.
not to get under a UFO because of radiation, etc. But there's nothing as far as police go, as far as a chapter or paragraph, anything as far as police departments.
Again, I think that the police are starting to come out of the closet, so to speak. And you're seeing more and more police now actually talking about UFOs.
Okay.
You got the Stevensville case down there where the whole department, I mean, you got a bunch of cases where the police are actually coming out saying, we've seen it. We don't know what you're talking about. We've seen it. So how you telling us we didn't see it?
Okay.
See, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you'd be fired. Today, I mean, it's like it's here.
Yeah.
And let's bring it out. I mean, I think most departments should do that. But again, it depends on who's running the department.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know, there was this this chapter in UFO magazine here that talked about cop sightings.
Right.
You know, that was an issue. You also brought forward there is something out there actually, and you had said it's in the FBI law enforcement bulletin.
Right.
So maybe not in local police departments is there anything talking about UFOs, but you had brought this FBI law enforcement bulletin,
Right.
February of 1975. Tell us a little bit about what is in this.
Well, this was written by J. Allen Heinrich, and his whole thing is here that he thinks that police officers should become involved in UFO sighting. He called it the invisible college, and that they should actually take the information down, and if they don't want to investigate it, hand it over to the law enforcement agency.
Okay.
You know, and another thing with the FBI, you know, speaking of them, I mean, they're a fine bunch of people. When I was doing the Todd Seas case, okay, I called up the FBI about them being present at the incident, and a young lady who was an agent spoke with me, and she says, "Mr. Saluga, obviously you don't know the mandates of the FBI." And I said, "And what would that be, ma'am?" She says, "By Congress, we're not permitted to investigate UFOs, and we don't." And I said, "Ma'am, I hate to tell you this, but you started investigating them in 1947, and you're still investigating them today. Don't give me that. I ain't gonna say the word." But you know, she got all upset about it, and they're still investigating them today, but they're not giving the information out. It's like the Delgado case down in Florida, where Louis Delgado was sitting in his car, and a green light came over, and he got all shook up and everything. They won't give you no information on it. The FBI investigated it, but they won't give you no information on it unless he signs a release of information. So this is how they're keeping all this stuff secret.
Okay. Well, we had another case back in '08 during that UFO wave, same time as this Bucks County officer. This one was in Butler, not too far from here. And this guy was actually a military witness. It's case number 14160. And for people who are MUFON members, you can look that up.
It was a Mars case, right?
Yeah.
I investigated
Mars.
that too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember this case. You know, in this case, he says he went outside. He's looking out towards the west, towards I-79 from his house, and he saw this gray thing in the sky. He said it was about a quarter of a mile away, and he said it moved to the west, and then in an instant it was gone. And he says, you know, I'm retired from the U.S. Air Force, and he says, I know my aircraft, and I can identify aircraft by the sound signature.
Right.
Even if I didn't see it, I would know it from hearing it, besides being able to see it and recognize it. And he said he also found out that there was a retired Army person in the same area that had some pictures. And he concluded it by saying, I now have my camera with me at all times. So what do you remember about that case?
He was actually out at Groom Lake, That's where he was stationed at.
Oh, okay.
And he's seen a lot of the airplanes out there, a lot of the ones we're testing in that. And his whole thing was there was a bunch of people standing outside, and some of the people didn't see it. And we got into the discussion about that. And his whole thing was that he knew what he was talking about, and nobody else knew what he was talking about. I mean, it was unknown. The case was unknown. But today, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the paranormal stuff going on.
Some of it.
The gargoyle report we're getting up in Socorro.
No, I don't.
He's one of the guys that's seen that.
Okay.
And it's odd because people that have UFO sightings, a lot of them have other type of sightings.
Okay.
I mean, when you have a UFO sighting, it's like you become psychic for a while. And he's seen that. I mean, the guy's pretty cool. I mean, he's a good guy. I mean, but yeah, we unfounded the case, and that was really it.
But we've had cases where there could be 5 people standing, and
Right.
they look up, 2 of the people see, and the other 3 didn't see
Right.
anything.
Well,
Right?
see, again,
I've heard plenty of
yeah.
cases like that.
again, we're going into the interdimensional. I think that there are certain people out there, like with Bigfoot. Okay, certain people can see Bigfoot, certain people can see ghosts, and certain people can see UFOs, and others can't. I think somebody has it in them to do that. I mean, I believe everybody don't have that ability.
Yeah, I agree with you because, you know, I've said this in my lectures that, you know, we use 3% of our DNA, just 3%.
Right.
And we use about 8 to 10% of our brain capacity. So we have these abilities in us, these almost latent abilities that some people can tap into these other areas. And I've had paranormal and ghostly activity happen really since 1989 for the last 25 years. And I know it's not me imagining because my dog reacts to it.
Right.
I mean, if we
But
both hear
they
a
can
big
pick it up.
noise,
They
and
can
we
pick
both
it up. You know, it's like it's like kids. You talk to kids about this stuff. Okay, like again, to get off of this subject, but get on Bigfoot for a second. They had a sighting of Bigfoot. There were 3 kids playing down over the hill in the woods. And the Bigfoot was like, you know, they always look around a tree like this, and he's watching the kids play. And the 10-year-old and the 11-year-old, I think that was their age, they seen it. And they took off running and screaming. And the little 4-year-old girl was just standing there.
Didn't see anything?
And no, they ran up to the top of the hill, and the dad says, "Where's your sister?"
Yeah.
And, oh my God, we left her down there. And she was happy.
Yeah.
She said she was staring at it, it was staring at her. I mean, you know, but again, kids, I think, over the years, we lose that because they tell us we don't have playmates, we don't have this and that, and you lose it. And I mean, I think that's what the world today, they don't want us to have it.
They've always said that kids have that connection when they're small, that they can see dead people.
Right.
You know, they can see things that then they kind of grow out of it, you know.
Right. Well, they don't grow out of it, they're taught to not to be in it.
Suppress it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You know, because everybody thinks you're mentally challenged. I mean, you know, and that's the whole thing. You know.
So now, there's been other famous cases involving police officers. What would you say is the most famous police case that that Project Blue
Lonnie
Book
Zamora.
was? Okay, so tell us about Lonnie Zamora in New Mexico.
Okay, Lonnie was actually chasing a speeding vehicle in Sirocco. I think I pronounced Sirocco.
Socorro.
Yeah, New Mexico. And he heard something, and he stopped chasing the car and started going down over the hill. When he got down over the hill, he actually seen a craft shaped like, I think it was an egg, he claimed, and it had stilts, like, you know, where it landed.
Yeah, there were 3 stilts holding it up.
And he's seen little people with white suits on, white things walking around it. And then when they seen him, they all jumped in and took off, all right? Project Blue Book came down there to investigate it, and they said it was an unknown. They even said it was one of the best cases they've ever seen.
Yeah, I found it interesting with the Lonnie Zamora case, they never debunked it. There were a lot of cases
they didn't. But here about 2 years ago, some college out there said that that was actually one of their jokes they played. The insignia on it that comes like this and that, they said that that's actually an insignia of the college. And they did that. Again, they waited till the guy died, and then
they
said
waited
it.
40 years later to say that was the pie signature.
But again,
that was their.
But again, did they say it or did the government tell them to say it? I don't. You know, with UFOs, I don't trust the government as far as the wind blowing. I mean, They've been lying since the beginning, and they're still lying now.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you always get on a lot of these cases, somebody will step forward and say, oh, that was us, we launched the balloon, that
Right.
was us, we did this. Either the person wants to get their name in the media
Right.
to take credit, or somebody has said to them, hey, can you take credit for this?
And a lot of people today, even doing an investigation, I've had people, when I was at their house, somebody would come in and say, well, that's a man in black, don't talk to him, he's government. I mean, who in the hell would believe I'm government? I mean, you know, but they still
You're
believe that.
undercover, Fred.
Yeah. I mean, they still believe this. A lot of people still believe that, I mean, the government's out to get them if you talk about UFOs, so that's why they don't talk about it.
I've never had anyone from the government contact me or anything, you know.
Well, I have, but I will not discuss the case.
Okay.
Okay?
I mean, the only thing I've ever had is where I did a number of shows. I wrote a book on the Mayan calendar and the
Right,
prophecies,
right.
and 4 different times when I talked about super volcanoes,
Right.
5 times actually, twice the show, somebody tried to take the signal down, and 3 times we got cut off and had to call back
Right,
in
right.
when I got to talk about the Yellowstone super volcano.
Well, they don't want you to talk about it.
I agree,
because
because I
if
think
it,
that's a real one.
if it goes, we're doomed. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, with Lonnie Zamora, though, there was something else that happened. Didn't he, they either had, there were indentations of
Right.
the 3 legs.
Right.
Did they take casts or photos?
They
and,
took cast and photos.
and then that was taken by the government, right? By the Air
Right.
Force or Project Blue Book. And
Blue
they
Book.
disappeared, right?
Right.
Those casts never showed up again.
It says right here, analysis reports of physical evidence at the site never have been released to the public.
Okay, so they had the cast,
Right.
and it was never released. So, yeah, and Lonnie Zamora is considered one of the best cases.
Yeah,
He was one of the best credible
Right,
witnesses.
right.
And, you know, Blue Book never came back like they did. Well, a lot of times Blue Book would sell out their own pilots and stuff, Air Force pilots. You know, they would report seeing something, and the next thing, you know, Blue Book would come back and say, well, you know, he was drinking, or
Right.
it was Venus, or, you know, drinking
No.
on the job, and really discredit what the pilot had said. But there
I
was
think-
nothing with Lonnie.
I think Blue Book was actually a debunking thing.
Oh, it was.
They-
It
that's what they
absolutely
did.
was, yeah.
And they had some cases that they couldn't debunk. I mean, they had to have some cases that they would let go, and I think Zamora was one of them
Yeah.
because of the publicity.
Yeah.
I mean, God forbid if they would have, with the crash out in Roswell, if what's-his-name had went to the sheriff's department and took the pictures, the sheriff sold out there would go into the military.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing with that.
Now, there's been some cases where it's actually crossed state lines, or one officer radioed another officer. You had Portage, but then there was the one in Missouri. Do you remember that one? There was. We'll talk about Portage next, but there was one in Missouri where it was like 7 different police cars as this UFO was flying. They radioed ahead to the next one and
That
the
was
next
Illinois.
one. And that was fairly recent, but
I think that
Portage
was
is very-
Illinois.
No, well, it could be Illinois. not
Millstadt,
Missouri.
Illinois,
Okay,
yeah.
but Portage did the same thing, right?
Right. They were sitting there and they seen something up in the sky. What the hell is it now?
Okay. Well,
Anyhow,
well,
and they started after it.
Yeah.
They went on an 80-mile chase. All right.
and they did 100 miles an
an
hour,
hour.
7
They had-
counties,
right,
police
they
from
had-
7 counties in 2 states.
Yeah, and they actually had other police join in the chase.
Right.
Okay. And when they came to investigate it, Blue Book said it was Venus.
Yeah, that was a case where they actually came back at the
Right.
offices. 2 officers resigned
Right.
over that.
Well, they had to.
Yeah, one became a house painter and
Yeah.
pretty destitute, lost his
Right.
marriage. The other quit and went to San Francisco
Right,
to
right.
be a bus driver.
But then again, I mean, see, this is another reason police don't want to get involved in this, because, you know, they seen what they seen.
and
all
they're
right?
the best observers.
Yeah, and I mean, they know what they've seen.
Right.
They 7 steps to hell, they call it, whatever. And, but yet the government comes in and says, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And police don't want, police don't want to be even talking about
Yeah,
that. I mean, so that's another reason they don't
Okay.
say anything.
Well, that's our show for today, talking about police sightings. I mean, there's plenty of documentation in different books and magazines. And like I said, 4% of the cases that we get in Pennsylvania are from police officers.
And if I may say something, I've been writing a book on this for the last 10 years.
Okay.
If anybody out there has any information on police and UFOs, if they could email me
Okay.
at fsaluga@aol.com.
Yeah, and your email is also on our website,
Right,
mufonpa.com,
right,
to
right.
contact each of our
Right,
investigators. So that's our show, and I hope more police officers come forward. Thanks,
I
Fred.
think they will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fred, today let's talk about UFOs over Erie, and in particular the famous Presque Island case that took place in 1966. Now, when I published my UFOs over Pennsylvania book, you and Reverend Swope from Erie each wrote
Right.
a chapter. It's all part of that chapter of UFOs over Presque Island,
Right.
and you wrote a chapter. But this was a case that, well, next year in 2016 will be the 50th anniversary of this case, just like this year is the 50th anniversary of Kecksburg,
Right.
December of '65. This case
Right.
took place in the summer of '66.
Yeah, July 31st.
In July 31st. So we got this, what I think is an important case, and it kind of falls more into your area with Bigfoot as a possible explanation also with this. So what happens with this case over Presque Island? You have, it's the evening, July 31st, and the witnesses are actually from New York.
Right.
They're
right.
from Jamestown, New York. There's 4 adults in their car. They came from Jamestown. They're at beach number 6 at Presque Island.
4 adults and 2 children.
Yeah, 4 adults and 2 children.
Right.
And I just want to mention the ages. You have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 20-year-old. And then there were 2 children that are 6 months and 2 years old.
Right.
So there's 6 people, there's 4 adults, they're all young adults from 16 to 26.
Right.
So their car gets stuck in the sand, they're on the beach, they can't get the car going, they try to push it, etc., and they can't get it going. So a patrolman comes by,
Well,
right?
2 of them. 2
Yeah, 2 patrolmen. It was Ralph Clark and Robert Loeb.
Right.
And they kind of help them, and they say, look, if you can't get it going, you know, we'll come back in an hour or so and help you out, you know.
Well, LaBelle went out to look for help. He left.
Well, yeah, they left at that point, yeah, to go get the
Well,
tow
LaBelle
truck.
left before the police even got there.
Oh, okay, so yeah, the one of the 4 adults
Right. He had
went
gone.
to get,
Yeah.
he went to get the tow truck.
Right. Right. He had
Okay.
left before.
Okay, and then the cops basically said that they would circle back later if the tow truck doesn't show up,
Right.
and give them a hand. So now the people in the car though say that they kind of see a star that's moving and getting brighter.
Right.
It would move fast, and then it would kind of dim out, and then it came straight down, and the car starts to vibrate.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And then wasn't there something with a light that was shining?
There's different parts of this now. In the beginning, what's the guy's name? Tippett?
Yeah.
Tippett. He said that there was actually 9 lights on it, and they
Okay.
were circling the area. And then he said there was 1 light. I mean, he changed his story a couple of times on that,
Okay,
the light.
but
so-
basically it kind of went down behind the woods, but they said that there was at least 1 strong beam of light that
Right.
you could see through the
Right,
woods.
right, right.
And you
Well,
can see it there.
There was actually bushes 12 feet high in front of the car from where they landed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they could see the light through that. It kind of was shining a beam of light.
Right.
And so then later the patrol car comes back, the 2 officers, Clark and Loeb, they return. And just as they're coming back, that light turns off.
Right.
So right away, you got to say somebody intelligent turned this light off, or
Right.
something intelligent turned the light off.
That
So,
was at 10:15 p.m.
Okay, so at that point, what did they do? They told the police, and they
Well, the
went to
poli-
look for it, or
Well, the police had actually been driving by, and the guy in the car hit the brake light, so that the police would see the brake light.
okay.
And then that's how they came there. And when they came there, that's when the light went out, okay? He told the police that there was something strange going on, and they started to take a walk down
so
there.
Tibbetts and the cops went to
Right,
where the light was
right.
to check out
About
what that
150
was.
yards, they said it was.
Okay,
They got about 100 yards down, And that's when they started tooting the horn. They heard the horn blowing and that there was something else going on. They ran back to the car, and that's when the alleged creature was there.
Okay,
So they never actually seen the UFO. And secondly, I mean, 150 feet, the thing didn't take off. So, you know, again, when you're dealing with UFOs, they can just vanish.
But what happened was there was the 2 women and the 2 kids still in the car.
Right,
Because
right.
the men had left with the
Right,
police.
right.
And so what they see at this point, and that's why they were blowing the car horn, is something came out of the woods.
Right, right.
Right. So what was that? What came out of the woods at that point? It was something. They said it was an immense animal or creature, something that was black, featureless humanoid creature, over 6 foot tall.
Right. It was shaped like this.
Yeah, and hairy though, like
Right.
like a gorilla.
Like it was a Bigfoot, yeah.
Yeah, a Bigfoot, or what they said at the time was they kind of reminded them of a gorilla. What did it do to the car? What happened that
Put scratch
frightened them?
marks on the car. It
Okay.
was shaking the car, put scratch marks on the car, and they said it sounded like it was on top of the car.
Yeah.
And then it took off.
Can you imagine being these 2 women with these 2 small kids, and there's some
Well,
7 foot thing scratching up your
the
car and
one,
shaking it?
The girl, Anita Hathaway, whatever, she didn't see it
Okay.
because she was sitting in the back seat. And she, you know, the other girl was the one screaming and yelling and carrying on.
Okay, so when they started honking the horn, then the creature kind of moved back into the brush.
Right.
And at that point, they said that it disappeared and the
Right.
UFO took off, and the UFO disappeared.
Right.
And it took off at an incredible speed. So maybe it was the one woman who saw that.
Right.
The other in the back seat didn't. But then the officers come running back because they've been honking the
Right.
horn.
Right. Well, at that time, the police said, let's get the hell out of here. We'll go down to the station. Because when you're talking about animals being there and this and that, police said we could do better back there. So they went down and they started discussing it down there then.
Yeah. The one police officer, when he was running on the beach, he actually dropped his gun.
Right.
And he didn't even stop to pick it up because they were honking the horn so frantically. He didn't stop to pick his gun up and his service revolver, and he kept running back to the car. Now, what happened, though, is that now by 7 a.m., you know, the state police and the Air Force was there.
Well, but before you get to that, John, okay, study of police records for the day revealed that many other people, including a physician and other people, seen an object and strange lights in the sky where they're saying
Yeah,
they
there
had
was
that
a lot of
sighting.
other
Right.
witnesses
Yeah,
besides
yeah.
that they found out about. So when now you got Project Blue Book there, which was the Air Force, and you have the state police there, they found some impressions in the sand.
Blue Book didn't get there till the 3rd.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, the next day they called the PA. Well, what happened the next day, Patrolman Wilson and Canfield went into the area to check out everything, and they found 2 triangular shaped impressions about 8 inches deep.
Okay.
And they found what appeared to be, they called it claw marks, which were also 5 to 6 feet apart. It was like a creature walking, and they took cast up.
What's the normal gait of a person walking? So if you were walking, how far apart is a person's feet? 3-4 feet, maybe?
3-4 feet, yeah.
So the gait was like 5-6
5 or
feet.
6 feet, right.
So you're talking about something that takes some long strides.
Right.
It would have to be taller, 6-7
Right.
feet, with some real long strides. And that went straight from the car to the woods.
To the water. In the water, in the woods to the water.
Yeah. So it was basically what they had said.
Right,
They saw this
right.
creature and it went off into the brush. That's where they found these footprints spaced apart, bigger spacing than, say, a human would have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they got there, they also find an unidentified clear liquid substance near the indentations. They collected that.
So where the footprints were, there was some sort of a gooey type
Right.
liquid. Now we got pictures of that also.
Right.
If you take a look at this, this is an actual picture from 1966. It was a Polaroid,
Right.
and it says that there's a sticky, non-evaporating droppings found in the tripod area. And you can see it.
Right.
That was some sort of stuff that was where the footprints
When
were.
I read you what the Project Blue Book said, you'll really like what I got to say with that.
Okay.
It's interesting.
All right. So with those footprints, there was some goo, in those footprints.
Right.
So what happened after that?
Okay, so they took the impressions and all of that. And then one of the guys that took the pictures and the impressions, he became sick at 8:30 that night. I mean, I don't really know what it has to do with that, but he had
It may have been from these liquids. He might have
Right.
touched it and stuff. He got very sick. One of
yeah,
the police
yeah,
officers,
102.6 was his temperature.
Yeah, and that was a police officer.
Right, and his wife was a nurse. So another interesting thing with that is there was a large freshly gouged area of wood and bark, exact dimensions not recorded, was noted in the willow tree close to the picnic area. The bark was not found on the ground at the time, so whatever it was took the bark out, okay?
So it just kind of clawed it.
Right. The gouged area was seen by LaBelle and Patrolman Gannon. They did another study on the area on July the 6th of 1968, and it revealed that the tree had been cut down and removed.
Yeah, so 2 years after this happened, they went back and they removed the tree.
Well, they removed the tree prior to that. They went back and looked at it 2 years later.
Okay.
And the tree was removed and the other trees were still there.
Yeah,
all
so
the other
only
trees.
that one.
Right.
See, and again, that reminds me of the Bucks County case that I was talking about with the police officer and the woman that saw these probes come
Right.
down in her tree. It was about 2-3 years later. The landlord, he cut the tree down.
Right,
He said he had to prune it because it was too close to the house, but he basically cut a 25-foot tree down to 3 feet, and he got rid of the evidence at that point.
And also, considering the Bigfoot creature, 3 days later in Erie, a woman observed an unusual creature in the streets of Erie. Another woman in the area saw a similar creature that same week. She reports that she was driving down 3rd Street late at night when she seen the creature and stopped her car. She reports that the creature came up to her car and pounded on the hood and then moved into the darkness. Okay?
Yeah. Now, the one witness, though, who was in the car that had seen all of this, the one that was in the front seat, Mrs. Clem,
Right.
They had her interviewed by a psychiatrist.
Right.
And he said her testimony was true.
Right.
She was not making this
Right,
up.
right.
And when Blue Book showed up, the Air Force, they assigned case number 10798. So if anyone wants to Google, look up Blue Book case 10798,
Right.
you will get this Presque Island case. Let me tell you something that happened years later, because we talk about how there's always somebody comes forward to take credit, right?
Right.
So what happened years later was up in Erie, Action News 24 was doing this Erie flashback series talking about older cases, and when they brought this case up, these people come forward and say it was a hoax. There was a local truck driver, Mr. Kim Faulkner, who had created a papier-mâché hot air balloon
Right.
that was seen, and that his brother also confirmed that they did this, and they were afraid to come forward at the time, so they had kept quiet. But see, what happened, though, that's what the people remember because it was on the news. But then the further investigation after they said that
Right.
was, looking into it, you find that, we go back and look at the weather, the wind
Right.
patterns.
I have the weather right
Yeah,
here.
so the wind and the weather patterns would have blown this balloon completely away from
Right.
Beach 6.
Right.
It's not even possible because it would have gone in the opposite. Balloons can't go against the wind.
Right. They
It
go,
would-
go the other way.
They would
right.
go with the wind, and it would have been miles away. So the witness, and it doesn't match the whole thing with the searchlight, and a balloon can't have this heavy searchlight and then just,
Well, I think, too, you could get a couple minutes of fame for that.
yeah.
And I think that's what's a
part
lot of the
it.
people, it's a couple minutes of fame. I mean, where did the Bigfoot come from? Where, the thing set down. I mean, there was 12 prints in it, like your prints right here. I mean, 12 inches down in the ground. How could a paper balloon do that?
Yeah.
I mean, but again, I mean, like I say, they got their 12 minutes or whatever, and that was it. I mean, they was on TV and the whole nine
Well, one of the
yards.
other things too is they found fur, right?
Right.
And there's a picture. We have a picture of that shows the police. I don't know if that's a parkie or a police officer standing there. He's got a patch on his shoulder, but it says the tree trunk, which was later found. They found hair pieces on it. This is August 8th of 1966. That up on the tree trunk is arrows here. Well, you
Right.
can see where the bark is gone, like you had mentioned.
Right.
And there's this hair
That's why they took the
there.
tree. That's why they took the tree, so nobody could come back and do
Yeah.
it. They probably removed the tree 2 or 3 days after the incident.
Yeah. Now, there was, like you said, there was 8 other witnesses, at least 8 that had
Right.
seen it. One of the other witnesses was the son of the police chief
Right.
there.
Right.
And what he said he saw was that he got on the scene, he saw the car stuck in the sand, he saw the large claw marks that tore up the top and side of the vehicle,
Right.
and he said they were pretty deep and long. He saw these odd-shaped footprints with an odd gel that was in every footprint.
Right.
Right, and then he was stopped by the state troopers and told, "You got to get out of here. That liquid in the footprints is radioactive."
Right.
So
Well,
that was their way of scaring him off.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
they proved it wasn't radioactive. Nothing was radioactive.
But they wanted to scare him off. So, but he saw the 2 women crying. They were
Right.
hysterically crying, and you know, it's weird. So, not weird, but odd. One of the witnesses up there at the time was Fred Lane. Fred Lane,
Oh,
our guy
Right,
from
right,
Erie
right.
that's up there. We do the conference
Yeah.
with him. You know, so here he made a statement that he observed a hovering red object that had a pulsating type light on it, and what he saw take off across Lake Erie at a tremendous speed.
Well, Lake Erie's been, I mean, we've been getting quite a bit of cases up there.
Yeah.
And, you know, like Terry says, it's possible that they got something going on in Lake Erie.
Yeah, well, Terry Ray, who was on
Right.
an earlier show with
Right,
us,
right.
an
He-
attorney, did some analysis.
Right.
And
He feels there's an underground base up in
yeah,
that area.
based on the reports that
right.
there's a base under the water is what it is. But there was another, and this is kind of a strange case that happened at the same time with this. This truck driver by the name of Steve Duder, he owned his own trucking business. He said he was driving at night at that same time, and he said all of a sudden the cab of his truck got illuminated. There was this bright light on it, and he saw this enormous sphere that lit up the highway. Now the strange thing is, when he got home, he had traveled 120 miles with an 18-wheel rig, and it took him under an hour, and he also made it back to his house.
Right.
In 120 miles back into his driveway in less than an hour. So, but then he said he had some strange things happen that, like with his mind, he seemed to be able to project his thoughts and influence people.
A lot of times when you have an encounter, say, of the 4th kind, you actually get telepathy. You can get the powers. I mean, a lot of people poltergeist cases, poltergeist activity starts. They're saying now that Barney and Betty actually had poltergeist activity that was never brought out. I guess Morgan just brought that out not too long ago.
Okay.
But that's with a lot of the cases. I mean, people actually get paranormal.
So somehow they're able, so whatever happens on these abductions, however they're examining us, and they're not cutting people open most of the time like
Right.
we do with our surgery, they seem to tap into our brains, and then that kind of leaves us with some extra abilities,
Right,
you know, that we then are psychic.
And I think they may do an implant, which actually does that.
Oh, that could be
You know,
also.
the implant actually develops the psychic ability, which they can actually watch what you're doing. You know.
So one of the things, what happened when the Blue Book people, the Air Force people showed up? Didn't they contaminate the scene?
Yeah,
and-
100%.
Yeah, tell us if you remember
Well,
what happened.
I'll
with
just
the
tell you
Blue
what
Book.
I'll tell you their conclusions. That's
Yeah.
even better. Okay. No evidence. This is from both Major Hall and Mr. Palmer or whatever. They checked the area for radioactivity. None. Okay. Project Blue Book says no evidence exists to relate to the damp areas and the indentations found on the beach to the sighting. Considering the indentations, the following comments also presented. No object could have made a stable landing without at least a 3rd appendage. Sand should have been a lot more compressed for the alleged landing. Portions of the ground indentations appear to be uncovered, not totally compressed as they should have been. By definite sign of the vehicle departing the area in the sign, no evidence or heat blast or sand being disturbed by aerodynamic vehicle. Rough weight calculations place weight of the alleged object at approximately 1,500 pounds total weight. This being a static load estimated calculated to 2-legged object. Acrylic resonance They're saying it was acrylic residence was present in the large sample taken in indentation. This was attributed to the acrylic lacquer that was sprayed on the indentation prior to the cast being molded. So they're saying that the liquid inside was actually sprayed there before they took it. That's what they're thinking.
But yet it was there in every one of those footprints. And when they say that the sand should have been blown, because we're using our mentality that we would have a jet where this is anti-gravity, it just lifts up. You know, it's total, and it doesn't, you know, if you remember the Roswell, some of the stories on that, the one that we actually captured, people said it kind of just hovered there. They had it in air, and you could kind of just lift it up with your hand, yet the thing weighed tons.
But here's the best one. Urine was distinctly present in all the soil samples. So actually somebody, you know, now here's...
Or the creature.
Right. Well, they're saying no correlation can be, this is what his final thing is. No correlation can be found to exist between the three factors of the case under consideration. Light, indentations, monster, light. So they're saying there was no monster. What they're saying a monster was a bear, okay? No evidence relates, well, instead of really getting into it. What they're saying is that they feel that everybody was actually lying.
Yeah, but you know, they said it was an animal, but yet the I think it was the chief of police. Yeah, he said that there are no bears or large animals on the peninsula. And the interesting thing that I found typical, the Air Force Major Hall, when the state police were making those casts and they were taking pictures and stuff, the Air Force, Hall came over and he kicked sand into all of those prints, kind of like kicked it over, destroying the evidence at that point, even though some casts were made. Took control of the casts and then took the pictures from the police. We need this for Project Blue Book. Which is the mistake made on so many of those cases. They turn it over because they say, well, you're the experts, you got to look at it, you got to have it, and you never get it back. And you never get a good conclusion back as to what happened. But, you know, it seemed interesting that that's what they had said had happened. But, you know, they tried to make it out to be, you know, an animal had caused it. But NICAP, which was the big agency at the time, like MUFON, NICAP sent 5 of their investigators there to Lake Erie, and they concluded that it was unexplained and that the creature was some sort of a Bigfoot, Sasquatch type
Well, that's
hominid.
When they start saying there was no such thing as Sasquatch. See, I think the government is well aware of Bigfoot, and I think the government's been involved with Bigfoot since back in the 60s.
And there are a handful of cases where they're present during a UFO.
And you know, and again, the government. I mean, this was one of the famous cases here too. But the government would have lied about it too if they didn't have so many witnesses to it.
Now, do you know what the people up in Erie did 10 years later? This is really interesting, and I've got to try to contact Fred Lane and see if it's still there. 10 years later, in 1976. The store owners and merchants there, they collected $2,600 and they constructed a UFO landing pad in the community park that's overlooking Lake Erie. It opened on July 4th of, I guess that would be 77, and they created a staging area for a Martian landing for UFOs.
I didn't hear that.
So, yeah, they did that. It was 10 years after this case. So I'm curious, is that still there? Does anybody remember?
I know Sam and I went up there on a case where allegedly we had a case going up there on 79, and then there was a case came in on Lonnie Monsters and Mysteries or whatever, about a guy that's seen 2 little Ethiopians running across the street, and they had belts on and this and that, and they ran into the woods. And Sam and I went up there to look into that, and we went to a veterinarian clinic. And this is interesting because we went to the this is where these people are, but we go to this veterinarian clinic, walk in and say, hi, we're from MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and we'd like to go back in your woods there. We had a UFO report. Could you please sit down for a minute? The doctor came out and sat down and started talking to us, telling us that one of his people was abducted.
Wow.
I mean, it was 100%. These people was right
So the
behind us.
doctor came out was cooperating with
Right, 100%. You know, they'll do whatever we got to do.
What we're going to do on this case is next year in 2016, it'll be the focus of our Erie UFO conference.
Right.
Just like this year, it's the focus of the Kecksburg conference. And if you want more information on that, people, you just go to MUFONPA.com. The 3 conferences are there. This year we're talking about Kecksburg. Next year we're talking about this case, the Presque Island. And in this chapter, we name about a dozen witnesses.
Right,
I don't know if they're all still alive. It's 50 years. I want to try to track these people down and then try to get them to speak at the conference. But that's all we got for this week, Fred. But we'll try to track down these witnesses and have them speak at our conference. So thanks for covering the Presque Island case for us.
Yep.
Thanks, Fred.
You're welcome.